Stop for a moment, because someone has noticed something about you that you never truly considered significant. Yet somehow, it turned out to matter far more than you ever imagined. It was not your voice, not the exact words you spoke, and not even the way you smiled when they first saw you. It was something much quieter. It was the way you exist in different spaces, the way you carry yourself through ordinary moments, the way you choose what to wear when no one important appears to be watching, or at least when you believe no one is paying attention. And what your soulmate quietly recognized afterward completely changed the energy surrounding your name. You may believe people only notice the obvious things, the loud things, the expensive things, the perfectly arranged and carefully polished things. But the truth goes much deeper than that. A soul does not observe in the same way human eyes observe. Eyes can overlook tiny details, but energy has a way of noticing what words cannot explain. And that is exactly why this message may be finding you right now. There is someone connected to your future who has been quietly noticing your energy for much longer than you realize. Not in a possessive way, not through obsession, but through a deep sense of curiosity and emotion. Almost as if every color you choose, every subtle decision about your appearance, and every quiet expression you carry is revealing another part of the person you are slowly becoming. And what surprised them most was not simply how you looked. It was the contradiction living within you. Because in one moment, you can appear distant, almost impossible to reach, like someone surrounded by a mysterious wall that very few people are allowed to cross. And then, without warning, another side of you appears. There is softness in your presence, a gentle quality hidden underneath your confidence that never demands attention. Your soulmate noticed this contrast almost immediately, perhaps even before they understood why it affected them so strongly. At one point, they even tried to explain it to someone close to them, but their explanation came out unfinished because the feeling was difficult to put into ordinary words. They simply said, "There is something about the way they dress that feels honest." Take a moment and really think about that. In a world where so many people are constantly performing identities, copying what is popular, pretending to be someone they are not, or changing themselves just to receive approval, someone looked at you and recognized something genuine without you having to prove anything. Even during the moments when you were not trying to impress anyone, even when you questioned yourself, even when you looked into the mirror and thought you looked completely ordinary, someone else was noticing something authentic within you. And after that realization, something unexpected slowly began to happen. Your soulmate started comparing other people to your energy without even consciously meaning to. The way some people overdo their appearance suddenly became more noticeable to them. The way others constantly follow trends without having a sense of their own identity began to feel empty and artificial. But your presence remained inside their memory because it carried emotion rather than performance. Stay with this for a little longer, because there is another layer to this story that has not yet been uncovered. There was one particular moment they simply cannot erase from their memory. You were wearing something simple, something you probably chose without giving it much thought. Maybe you almost changed your clothes before leaving. Maybe you stood in front of the mirror and wondered whether something else would have looked better. Perhaps you assumed the entire thing was insignificant and that nobody would even notice. But when they saw you, something shifted quietly inside them. It was not really the clothing itself. It was the way your energy seemed to match it perfectly. Later, your soulmate tried to describe that moment in a strange but surprisingly powerful way. They said it was like watching someone dress as though they already knew where they were going in life, as though some part of them already belonged to the future they had not yet reached. That thought stayed with them much longer than they expected. They had seen beautiful people before. They had met impressive people, confident people, fashionable people, and people who knew exactly how to attract attention. But something about your energy felt completely different. It felt uncommon. It felt calm and intense at the same time. Almost like the presence of someone who had endured difficult things quietly, but still decided to choose grace instead of becoming bitter. What if your soulmate is not simply noticing your appearance, but sensing the emotions hidden underneath it? They may be recognizing the resilience inside you, the quiet strength you carry, and even the exhaustion you sometimes conceal behind a composed expression. Yes, even that part of yourself that you work hard to keep private. Sometimes the soul expresses its wounds through beauty without consciously realizing it. There can be something about the way a person carries themselves after surviving difficult experiences that cannot be copied. Your soulmate seems to recognize that expression within you. Not everyone has the ability to see beyond the surface. Many people only register what is immediately visible. They see the clothes, the face, the smile, the style, and then they move on. But this person keeps sensing that there is an entire story hidden behind your presence, behind your eyes, behind the way you introduce yourself to the world. They began wondering what shaped you, what experiences transformed you, what heartbreak softened you while somehow making you stronger at the same time. What kind of loneliness taught you how to become this calm version of yourself? And the strange thing is, instead of that mystery pushing them away, it made them want to come closer. Your soulmate has spoken about you when you were not there, not loudly, not carelessly, and certainly not in a way that would expose everything they feel. They spoke softly, almost cautiously, as though they were protecting a private emotion that still belonged only to them. It was as if saying too much about you would force them to admit feelings they were not completely prepared to face. And perhaps the most powerful thing they said was this: they do not even realize how unforgettable they are. Imagine those words being spoken quietly when you were nowhere around to hear them. People may have expected an ordinary compliment, something simple about your appearance or personality. But instead, your presence was described like an emotion, like a memory that continues to exist even after the person who created it has left the room. That is the difference. Many people are noticed during a lifetime, but very few leave behind a feeling that remains long after they are gone. Without realizing it, you became unforgettable to someone whose path may be much more connected to yours than you currently understand. And this is where the entire energy begins to change. Your soulmate is starting to experience something they cannot easily explain or control. The more they attempt not to think about you, the more certain details seem to return to their mind. The way you move through a room, the colors you choose to wear, the expression that appears in your eyes when you believe nobody is looking, the softness hidden underneath your strength, the unusual balance between gentleness and independence that makes you difficult to categorize. They keep returning to these details without intentionally choosing to do so. You are becoming a thought that refuses to completely disappear. And something within them is quietly shifting because of it. The strange part is that you may still believe none of this could possibly be happening. You might underestimate the effect you have on people because you are too familiar with your own presence. You see yourself every day, so the qualities that others find unforgettable may feel completely normal to you. But the energy you carry can reach people in ways you never consciously planned. And before this story reaches its deeper turning point, there is a particular memory your soulmate continues to revisit. It was never about perfection. It was about presence. It was one single glance that lasted just a little longer than it should have. Nothing dramatic happened. No major conversation changed everything. There may not even have been a clear reason for the moment to become important. On the surface, everything appeared completely ordinary. Yet underneath that ordinary moment, something remained. Your soulmate is slowly realizing that something inside them began changing from that exact point forward. After that day, your image started appearing in places where you were not physically present. During quiet moments, during conversations with other people, while they were trying to concentrate on work or daily responsibilities, even when they were attempting to focus on completely unrelated things, some small detail about you would suddenly return. Your energy seemed to interrupt their thoughts without asking permission. And the most surprising part is that none of it was ever about perfection. It was about the feeling you created without consciously trying to create anything at all. There was one particular evening they continued to replay in their mind. The lighting was ordinary. The surroundings were nothing special. There was no dramatic music, no perfect setting, and no extraordinary event taking place. Yet somehow, that moment stayed with them more strongly than memories that should have been far more significant. They remember how you turned slightly away for just a brief second, completely lost inside your own thoughts. You seemed disconnected from the noise around you, almost as if your mind had traveled somewhere far beyond the room itself. You were not trying to look mysterious. You were not attempting to gain anyone's attention. You were simply being yourself. And somehow, that was exactly what affected them. They noticed the small things most people would have ignored. The way you adjusted yourself without checking whether anyone was watching. The way your expression changed when you became lost in thought. The quiet confidence in the way you occupied your space without needing permission from anyone. They realized that you did not seem to be performing for the room. You were not searching for validation. You were simply present. And that authenticity made the moment feel strangely intimate, even though almost nothing was said. Your soulmate may not have understood it immediately, but later they recognized that this was one of the moments that made you different in their mind. They began to understand that attraction is not always created by dramatic beauty or obvious charm. Sometimes it begins with something almost invisible. A feeling, a pause, a glance. A certain way someone carries themselves when they believe nobody is paying attention. You may have thought that moment meant nothing, but for them, it became a quiet reference point. Whenever they encounter someone new, some part of their mind remembers the feeling of that moment with you. Not because they consciously want to compare everyone to you, but because your presence created a standard they did not know they had before meeting you. And there is something even more meaningful about this. Your soulmate did not become fascinated only by how you looked when everything was going well. They became interested in the contrast between your strength and vulnerability. They sensed that there were parts of your story you rarely discussed. They could feel that your calmness was not necessarily something you were simply born with. It may have been created through experiences that taught you how to protect your peace. They began wondering how many times you had been disappointed and still chose to remain kind. How many moments forced you to become stronger when you would have preferred to be cared for? How many times you had to walk away from situations that no longer matched the person you were becoming? That is why your style, your presence, and even the smallest details about you began carrying a deeper meaning for them. They were not just seeing clothing, they were seeing self-respect. They were not simply noticing your expression, they were sensing your emotional history. They were not only observing how you entered a room, they were noticing that you seemed to carry an entire world inside yourself without needing to announce it. And that kind of presence can become deeply memorable. You might have spent years believing that you needed to become more impressive before someone could truly notice you. Maybe you thought you had to change something about yourself, improve your appearance, become more confident, or become more like the people receiving attention around you. But the irony is that what affected your soulmate most was the part of you that was never manufactured. It was the part that remained when you stopped trying, the natural way you moved, the simple choices you made, the quiet expression on your face when you were not performing for anyone. That was the version of you that stayed in their mind. And perhaps this is the message you need to hear right now. Stop underestimating the impact of simply being yourself. You do not always know what another person remembers about you. You may remember the things you wish you had said differently, the clothes you wish you had chosen, the moments when you felt awkward, or the times you believed you were invisible. But another person may remember something completely different. They may remember the way you looked when you were unaware of being observed. They may remember your calmness. They may remember your eyes. They may remember a small gesture that you completely forgot. Your soulmate may have been carrying one of those memories quietly for longer than you realize. And while you have been wondering whether you were ever truly noticed, they may have been wondering how someone could leave such a strong impression without even trying. That is why this connection feels different. It is not built only on appearance. It is built on recognition. Something in your presence touched something within them that they had difficulty explaining. So if you have been feeling lately as though something is shifting around you, do not immediately assume that nothing is happening simply because you cannot see it yet. Some of the most important changes begin silently. Before a conversation happens, there can be a realization. Before someone reaches out, there can be an emotional decision. Before two paths come together, there can be a period where both people begin understanding what they truly feel. And your soulmate may be standing inside that exact realization right now. They are beginning to understand why certain memories of you refuse to fade. They are beginning to recognize that what attracted them was never simply what you wore or how you looked. It was the person behind those details. The person who had survived enough to become thoughtful, who had experienced enough to value peace, and who could still carry softness after everything that might have hardened them. That is why the moment they remember most is not necessarily the most glamorous version of you. It is the version of you that was unaware, the version that was simply existing, the version that had no idea someone was watching and thinking, "There is something about this person that I cannot forget." And perhaps that is the most beautiful part of the entire story. You were not trying to become unforgettable. You simply were yourself, and somehow that was enough. So take a breath and allow that thought to settle within you. You do not have to chase this person. You do not have to change your appearance to become worthy of their attention. You do not have to prove that you deserve to be remembered. What is genuine does not need constant performance. What is real can be felt even in silence. And sometimes the person who is meant to recognize you does not fall for the version of you that everyone else sees. They fall for the quiet version that appears when you believe no one is watching. That may be the exact version of you your soulmate has been remembering all along. And that simple moment touched them deeply, because you appeared both calm and distant at the same time, as though a part of you existed somewhere beyond physical space, beyond what other people could easily reach. And in that moment, they quietly understood something powerful. You are not dressing to impress the world. You are dressing according to the evolution taking place within you. If you are still here, comment one word below: aligned. Your soulmate has noticed something else that most people completely overlook. They can feel that your style changes with your emotional state. When you are healing, your presence becomes gentler. When you are focused, your energy becomes sharper and more deliberate. When you are protecting your heart, even your colors seem quieter, more reserved, almost as if your energy is communicating without saying a single word. Most people would never notice these subtle changes, but this person does, even if they cannot completely explain how they started reading your emotions through the smallest details. The movement of your sleeves when you cross your arms, the way you adjust your clothing when you feel uncertain. The sudden confidence that appears when you feel genuinely seen by the right energy. And one sentence slipped from them before they could even stop themselves. I feel like they are becoming someone important. Those words were never about status, fame, or wealth. They pointed towards something much deeper, something invisible yet incredibly powerful. Your soulmate senses your future before it has even completely unfolded. That is precisely why your presence unsettles them during certain quiet moments. Not because of fear in a harsh or negative sense, but because every time they think about you or see you, they experience a strange inner movement, almost like momentum beginning to build, like transformation is already happening, like destiny is quietly unfolding underneath everything that can be seen. And here is the part nobody ever truly explains to you. Your soulmate secretly admires the way you remain yourself in a world where most people constantly feel pressured to perform, pretend, or change their personality simply to be accepted. Even when trends change quickly, even when people begin copying one another without really thinking, there remains something unmistakably original about your energy. That originality cannot simply be copied. And that authenticity has become something they find themselves drawn toward again and again, almost without realizing it. It becomes addictive in a quiet way, not loud, not dramatic, but persistent. Stay here a little longer, because this becomes even more emotionally complex. At one point, someone asked your soulmate a very simple question about you. What do you even see in them? And for a moment, they could not answer. Not because they had no feelings, and not because there was nothing inside them, but because what they feel for you cannot easily be placed into logical words. How do you explain the comfort of someone's energy? How do you describe that peaceful sensation that appears inside you when they enter a room, even before they speak? How do you explain why one presence among millions suddenly feels familiar to your inner world, almost like recognition without having a memory attached to it? Your soulmate struggled to find the right words, searching for something accurate, something that would make sense to other people. Then quietly, almost beneath their breath, they finally said it. They feel real. That simple sentence surprised even them, because deep down, they know they have encountered many people before. Beautiful people, charming personalities, intelligent minds, fascinating conversations. But your energy carries something different, something rare, something that cannot easily be recreated. It is sincerity combined with mystery. And that combination becomes powerful when it is genuine, when it is not forced, when it is not performed. The more they notice you, the more curious they become about everything that shaped you before they ever met you. The experiences you survived, the heartbreaks that created silence within you, the disappointments you never openly discuss, the dreams you stopped sharing because too many people misunderstood them. Somehow, without you directly saying a single word, they sense fragments of all of it. It is not explanation, it is perception. It is emotional reading between invisible lines. And that is exactly why this connection is becoming increasingly difficult for them to ignore. There is also something they have never openly admitted. Sometimes they deliberately look away when you are nearby, because eye contact with you feels too intense, almost overwhelming in a subtle emotional way. Even that surprises them, because your presence now carries a certain kind of emotional gravity. It is not loud, attention-seeking energy. It is something quieter, deeper, something that gradually draws people inward until they suddenly realize they have become emotionally involved without ever planning for it. Your soulmate is still trying to understand why your presence affects them this deeply. And slowly, the answer is beginning to reveal itself. You remind them of a life they once desired, but eventually stopped believing could exist. A peaceful life. A life that feels emotionally secure. A connection that feels meaningful rather than confusing. A bond that is not built on performance, ego games, or constant emotional distance.